Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NorthStar Community. So glad to be here with you again for our online service. As you know, we are here for recovery from all of the various addictions in our lives, all those things that take up way too much energy, create too much negativity in our lives, and create lots of problems. Uh, Rick Warren, of course, he coined the term of we all have hurts, habits, and hangups. Pretty good way to describe our addictions is that they become too strong and they're based upon the pain of our lives, the pain that we feel about ourselves, the trauma we've experienced, the abandonment we've experienced, all add up to reasons why we become addicted. So, as you may recall, again, we break our addictions into three categories. We have substances, we have compulsive behaviors, and we have people addictions. And of course, for many of us, we don't have just one of those. We have two of them or three of them, and they all collide together. If I'm compulsively behaving, if I can't stop myself from doing destructive behaviors, 2 or 3 hours a night or more, pretty good chance I'm messing up my relationships, and then there's a pretty good chance I'm going to turn to substances to help me get through all that. So here's the deal. Quit judging yourself for it so much. You got to take responsibility. You got to change some things. But you're not an addict because you want to be. You're not living addictively because it's what you chose to be. It's like I always say, there's a pretty good chance that when you were 7 years old at Christmas time, you weren't sitting on him that your goal was to become an addict. So our addictions come from the pain, the hurt, the trauma of our lives. Once we understand that, then we can do something about this. And I agree with some of the things I've read. I've heard a couple of psychiatrists who are trying to get people to become more aware of this, that if we can take care of the trauma, the past traumas in our life, we can move on. I think about all the diagnoses out there I hear about: oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, all these things. Certainly some of them are legit. But if you took away the trauma piece and the abandonment piece in your lives, don't you think a lot of that would be less profound and less destructive and less strong in your life? And so that's why we're here. It's for us to become aware of what's driving us to be addictive. And if you're watching this, I assume you're at some form of recovery now. Let's be honest, some of the stuff that we've done, said, thought is insane. But when we're addicted, it makes sense. The stuff we do to keep our addiction alive is really about the stuff we do to avoid the pain in our lives. So again, we always like to use the definition of habitual behavior to avoid pain as a description of addiction, because there's so much pain in our lives, we just don't want to face it. It's hard. And so what I hope we're hearing as we continue on this journey of recovery is that you're not so bad. God knows your heart. God is love. Jesus Christ came to this earth to make a relationship with us that we can live our lives and be forgiven and can move on. Our goal is to have a rich, full, meaningful life. And I always kid about is it one that we can enjoy as well. But the fact is, a rich, full, meaningful life means we're connected with people. We're connected with ourselves. And when we say connected with ourselves, what that means is that we're aware of our feelings. We're aware of how our feelings and our thinking affects the stuff we do. For many of us, when we become addicted, we become so disconnected with ourselves. The big clinical term is dissociation, where our feelings and our thoughts are just so, like, I always talk about, do you ever look in the mirror and say, who am I looking at right now? Or you feel like you're walking and there's someone beside you walking with you and it's you, because you're not connected. You can't look at stuff because it's so painful. There's so much stress and misery in your life. And addiction is like a big tailspin. I was traumatized. I was abandoned as a child. I was acting out, trying to avoid all of that pain and the confusion all that did to me. And then I become an adult and I act out even more, and I live dangerously or irresponsibly or hidden with secrets, and I'm surviving, but I'm not really enjoying life. All those things. I don't have good relationships. All that stuff is all the stuff that happens to us when we're addicted. And so Gerald May, who wrote the book Grace and Addiction, I do recommend to people to get. I don't see it as a book you just sit down and read through, but it's certainly a book to look at. And he just makes such a scientific, clinical, but spiritual argument about addiction, about all of us have addictions. Again, it may be substances, it may be processes, it may be people, but we all have addictions. And when you look at some of the lists in there, you go, okay, yeah, that's me there. Yep, that's me there. And but the beauty is, what he's telling us is, because we're all addicted, we have to do something about it. And the ones that do something about it, you become better people because of it. So when we really look at our addictions and manage them, understand them, and quit living those addictions, we're better people because we have empathy for others. We have love for ourselves that we never knew before, which means we can have love for other people, which we never knew before. So that's what we talk about connection, is healthy connections, not this, when we talk about healthy connection with God, not this crazy, he's going to get me, I'm so bad and awful. If you knew the things I've done, I would never be forgiven for that. I was treated badly in church. I mean, we can go on with all the things that keep us from being connected, and for good reasons at times. And I apologize to all you out there who have been harmed by well-meaning Christians who have harmed you with their judgment and their meanness and all hypocrisy. But the fact is, they're addicted too. That's the point. And again, when you read the Gospels, which is the stories about Jesus when he was here, he was constantly battling the church people who knew everything. They got lost in the rules and the regulations, and they forgot about love, and they forgot about connection. They forgot about grace. So Jesus came and said to everybody, this is grace, this is love, I'm here. And he hung with the troubled, who were the outcasts. That's what he did, because that's the love he had, because he knew our hearts. He gets past our behaviors. God is love. His goal in life is not to condemn us. His goal in life is to commune with us, for us to experience his love. And the free will that we have is a double-edged sword. We can. The good news is we're not puppets. God doesn't tell us what to do and what not to do. That's on us. But the other side is God loves us no matter what. It's us that needs to connect with him. He's already connected. I know it's hard. It's so hard to believe this stuff sometimes, but I believe it, and I think it's the only way you can get through life. So Dr. Gerald May has a great quote. He was talking about how when we're at our low points, our loss would see it as rock bottom, those times when you know what hell means because you're there. You're alone, you're miserable, maybe broke financially, you have no one or anyone around you, or at least you feel that way, all those things. But maybe that's when we become the closest to God. I mean, let's be honest, when things are going well, it's easy to put God over in the corner and do it ourselves. When things aren't going so good, when it's easier for us to really at least look to God for something. So he has a quote. He says, "To be alive is to be addicted. And to be alive and addicted is to stand in need of grace." And so his point is, he puts a positive on this, is that when we're desperate, that's when we're closest to God. And maybe, just maybe, God knows what he's doing. And that's why we always try, in NorthStar community, which is full of people who have been traumatized and abandoned in their lives, who have got themselves caught up in dysfunctional relationships, dysfunctional behaviors, some dysfunctional use of substances. And I would say this as a plug for NorthStar. If you're sitting here saying, wow, that's not for me because I'm not addicted to drugs, a lot of people in NorthStar are not addicted to drugs. They're addicted to the toxicity of their trauma and their abandonment. They're living destructively with relationships. They're living destructively with their inability to get control of their lives and not work all the time, or to be angry all the time, or they're living their pain, and now they're starting to recognize what drives it. And there's been so much improvement, so much growth with NorthStar, and we'd love to have all you come and get the same thing. It's worth it. I know you don't believe me. A lot of you just tell me there's no way this is true. That actually happens. But I'm telling you, the growth that people see in themselves at NorthStar, it amazes them. And one of the things they get that most of them never had is connection with other healthy people. People who care about them, who wants what's best for them, who loves them, and is excited for their growth. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about recovery. So Gerald May again says, you know what? We're all addicted, and to be alive and addicted is to stand in need of grace. In other words, that's when we get closest to God. And again, God knows our hearts. He looks past the other stuff. God is the least of your problems, I guess what I'm trying to tell you in recovery. Turn to Him. See if it doesn't help you. You have to have a higher power to get past some of this because it's too big. You're too addicted. You want, a lot of you watching this want to stop, but you can't. Or you have, but you want to go back. I mean, there's so many reasons to be addicted, but there's also so many better reasons to be recovered. And I hope that we can all see that. So what we have to remember is, and I say this with humor, is maybe God knows what He's doing. I don't know. Maybe. The couple of my favorite couple quotes I love from recovery. One is, we are sick as our secrets. Living secrets, denying our addictions, denying our addictive behaviors, denying our addictive thinking so we don't have to feel pain does not work. It may work for a moment, but it doesn't work. So that's one of them, living our secrets. And I've had people just come to me and they'll finally say, you know what, I'm doing X, or I'm really actually drinking a whole lot. Whatever it is they tell me, you can just see relief on their face when they realize that they're not telling me something I haven't heard before, and that they're not that unique. The fact is, they are special and they are loved, but their addictive behaviors are pretty what most other addicts do. And that's a relief to them. The other quote I like is from Dr. Tversky when he talks about prolonging the inevitable. So we always say, do you believe God is love? Yes. Do you believe God wants what's best for you? Yes. Do you believe God has a plan for you? Yes. So why do we keep getting in the way? And family members of addicted people, just get out of the way. I know it's hard. It's so hard to do. It's so easy to be an enabler. It's so hard and confusing to know what healthy supporting is. But I would tell you, the only way addicts ever overcome their addictions is when they have to. And you know this. You're sitting here like, you know this. Every time we intervene, every time we help, every time we do something to stop the pain of an addict's journey, all we're doing is prolonging the inevitable. The only way an addict will recover is when we face so much pain, we don't have a choice. So every time we intervene, all we're doing is prolonging the inevitable. I hope that all of us in here can understand what I'm saying, because addiction's terrible. What it does to us, what it does to our loved ones is terrible. And the only way you can get better is through pain. And I know that's such a hard remedy, but it's true. You know, I like Russell Brand's quote. He says, addiction starts with pain and addiction ends in pain. We become addicted because of all the pain we've experienced, the self-loathing we have for ourselves, the confused, despicable view of ourselves, completely based on a myth that we are not valuable and worthy. And then the only way we can get to where we start seeing ourselves as valuable and worthy and not living addictively is through pain. Dr. Tversky calls rock bottom the law of human gravity, which I think is a better way of looking at rock bottom. And I think it really makes sense. So the law of human gravity basically says, again, that we always gravitate toward a path of least resistance. So whatever is the least painful, whatever is the easiest, whatever is the in the moment makes sense, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it. That's what we do. Well, so you say, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, look at addicts. They're destroying their lives. They're doing all these things. But that is the path of least resistance for an addict. Again, I'm assuming my audience knows about addiction. Either we have been or are addicted. The fact is, our self-loathing, our toxic shame from all the stuff we faced in our lives or didn't get from our lives is so strong and painful, it's just easier to act out addictively, despite the consequences. So I can be completely wrecking my life because of addictions, but it doesn't hurt as bad as facing the pain from my childhood, facing the pain of the traumas in my life. It's tough. It's a tough one to do, but that's what we do. So the only way that we can stop is when using becomes more painful than not using. And that is a tough day in life, but it is the day when we can become connected to God and realize that we can't do it ourselves. I wish it was easier. I wish there was another way. I think about all the various stories we have in the Bible, about our lives, about our crazy living. I mean, again, it's like someone said, if you really look at the Bible, on this side of the Bible, you have God in communion with man. And then on the other side, you have at the end, God coming back and being in communion with man. Everything in the middle is about us screwing things up, us not behaving, us not living correctly, Jesus coming and trying to right things. That didn't go well. It did, but in the short term, we crucified him. I don't know what else to say. We murdered our own Messiah. But the beauty is our Messiah is here today, alive and well. And so I hope that we can, for you that didn't grow up in the church, the Bible can be pretty confusing. I'm not telling you what to do here, but I think the King James Version is very confusing if you haven't grown up in the church. If you ever, I use the Message Bible all the time. I like it the best. The New International Version's good. Both of those are good. And much more contemporary language that we would know. But the Bible is full of stories about how God does not waste anything. The Bible's full of God's redemptive love. Yes, it is also full of a strong judgmental God, but it's also full of God's love. And all of the stuff he did that we may see as judgmental was based on the idea of creating pain in our lives so that we would come back and be spiritually sound and healthy. You think about, I don't know I assume most of you know the story of Adam and Eve, but basically I will really narrow it down to talk about addictive behaviors. So here we are, Garden of Eden, perfect, weather's perfect. I assume no mosquitoes biting you. You don't even have to work for food. It's just a perfect life. Everything's great. So God says, you can do whatever you want. Don't eat from the tree right over there. And of course, you know what we did. We ate from the tree, right? And then, now they get seduced by the dark force, Satan, however you want to look at it, tells you all these things. And really what he's telling them is, you are God yourself. So what do you listen to God for? You're God. You can do whatever you want. Not going to hurt you. And so, of course, they do it. And then, of course, then they try to lie about it. Again, none of us know that one. And we try to hide it. Talk about sick as our secrets, right? Well, then finally God says, nope, I got you. I know what you did. You can try to tell me what you want. So basically, he kicked them out of the Garden of Eden. And we can look at that as, mean and all that. The fact is, God knew that if they stayed in the Garden of Eden, they would never grow. They would be addicted. They would never do the things they needed to do. And addiction, one of his quotes is, addiction's empty and idolatrous wasteland is transformed by grace in the garden. When God did not kill them, he moved them out, and he had them live their lives around his grace. So maybe we can see today is addiction, as bad as it is, as much as it wrecks lives, I hope we understand addiction is based, what it's coming from. It's based on emotional pain that we have faced in our lives, and physical pain for some of you. But our addictions are a result of our confused, traumatic, abandoned childhood, most of us. We do using, living compulsively, creating broken relationships because that's what we know. And we do all this stuff because what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid the pain. And maybe if we could if that's why the power of God is so important, because if we really do believe in a higher power, we can turn that pain over to him. We can let God take over that part. And then we can work on getting better. We can work on connecting with other people. We can work on finding ways for ourselves to be connected spiritually, emotionally, physically, so that we can have a rich, meaningful life based on God, based on his love for us, not being addictive, not being addicted, all those things. So I hope you can buy grace. God's grace is, all you gotta do is ask. That's all you gotta do. You'll probably screw it up. You'll do things to harm yourself. You'll do things to be addictive. Because we do that in recovery. We do relapse. But God's love never goes away. God's love is always there. And it's really the only way you can recover is to believe that. So I hope that you have a place to go. God's unwavering love is always there. And I'm hoping that you're here listening. So obviously you're in recovery at some level. Keep going. It's worth it. For either further down the road, it's worth it, but it's still hard. There's never where recovery doesn't require recovery, for lack of a better way of saying it. But oh, what a much better life. In case you ever start missing the old days, just remember the terror, the loathing, the self-hatred, the aloneness, all those things. We don't want that. We want a life where you can actually have connection, where you can have love, where you can have faith and hope. See thyself for self person, a non-addictive person. And then I hope at the end of that, you'll decide that you can be there for others as well. So here's a quote I'll close with. Addiction cannot be defeated by the human will acting on its own, nor by the human will opting out and turning everything over to divine will. Instead, the power of grace flows most fully when humans choose to act in harmony with divine will. Let me try again. I messed that up pretty bad. Addiction cannot be defeated by the human will acting on its own, nor by the human will opting out and turning everything over to divine will. Instead, the power of grace flows most fully when humans choose to act in harmony with divine will. So we got to do our part. God's doing his part. Put it together. We're going to recovery. We're going to be in recovery. So I thank you for joining today. Sorry I was getting a little bit of a cold going there. Anyway, we meet on Wednesdays and Fridays at 6:30 here at Walnut Grove Baptist Church in Mechanicsville, Virginia. We have a great meetings. We feed you. We have full meals. We had spaghetti with Italian sausage this week. We have childcare. So we really do take away reasons for you not to come. Don't live your life in isolation. Take the chance and come try us. If you're not local, you can email me at csimpson@wgva.church at any time, and I'd love to hear from you and know what's going on in your life. Recovery is a process. It isn't something that happens immediately. Be patient. Have your faith in a God of love, a God of grace, and things will be great. So we always close with a prayer of serenity, and so let's go ahead and do that. And I thank you for joining me today. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, one moment, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. Again, thanks for joining me. Have a great week.